We make thousands of choices every single day. Seriously, think about it. From the tiny stuff like what to have for breakfast, all the way up to huge life decisions like what career to chase. But have you ever really stopped and asked yourself, why? Why that choice?
I mean, it's a huge question, right? Is it all just random impulse? Are we just driven by our feelings? Or is there some kind of logic humming away under the surface? Well, it turns out there's a really powerful theory out there that says, yeah, there's a logic to it all. And this is the core of it. You can almost think of it as the science of why on earth did they do that? The answer, according to this framework, comes down to three things: logic, what we prefer, and what we think we'll get out of it. It's basically saying that every choice we make, big or small, is a calculation to get the best possible deal for ourselves.
Okay, so let's put a name to this idea. What we're talking about is rational choice theory. And while it might sound a little academic, it's a huge deal. It actually started out in economics, but now you see it everywhere, trying to explain everything from how we vote to even why people commit crimes.
So, what is rational choice theory, or RCT for short? Well, the big idea here is that it sees all of us, you, me, everyone, as rational actors. That's the key phrase. And what that means is, whenever we face a decision, we're supposedly doing this little mental calculation. We line up our options, weigh the good against the bad, and then we pick the one that gives us the most utility. And utility is just a fancy word for whatever gives us the most benefit or makes us the happiest. All right, but for a theory this big to work, it has to be built on some pretty solid ground rules, right? It makes some key assumptions about how we think. You can think of them as the 5 rules of the road for making a perfectly rational choice. Okay, so here's the blueprint for that perfectly logical thinker. First, it assumes we're rational actors. We're not just stumbling around. Our choices have a purpose. And what is that purpose? Well, that's number 2. Utility maximization. We're always trying to get the best bang for our buck, the most good stuff for the least amount of bad stuff. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. To do this, the theory assumes we have complete information. Yeah, all of it. It also assumes our preferences are stable and make sense. If you prefer A over B and B over C, then you've got to prefer A over C. No flip-flopping. And finally, every choice is goal-oriented. It's all part of a logical plan to get what we want.
Let's put this to the test with a real-world example. Imagine you get 2 job offers. One's got a huge paycheck, but it's going to be super stressful. The other one, less money, but amazing work-life balance. Now, according to rational choice theory, you're not just going to guess. No, you're going to sit down and weigh everything. The cash, the stress, the commute, where you want to be in 5 years, and you'll pick the one that gives you the most personal utility. The one that, all things considered, is the best deal for you.
So, this isn't just some dusty theory in a textbook. Not at all. It's actually used out there in the real world, in the wild, as a tool to figure out why we do the things we do. Let's see where it pops up.
And man, is it versatile. Look at this. In economics, it's used to explain why you choose one coffee brand over another. In political science, it helps analyze voting patterns. And this one's really interesting. In criminology, it's used to see crime not just as some crazy, irrational act, but as a calculated choice, weighing the potential loot against the odds of getting busted. It's everywhere.
But you might be thinking what I'm thinking. This model of a perfectly logical human, someone who has all the facts and isn't swayed by anything, it sounds a little robotic, right? A little too perfect. And that's where we run into what I like to call the human glitch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves for a second. Are we really that logical all the time? Think about your own decisions. Do you always, 100% of the time, make the most rational choice? Or do things like your mood, your gut feelings, or just being tired get in the way? Of course they do. And this is where the big critiques of the theory start to roll in.
This really gets to the heart of the problem. You've got the theory on one side, and then you've got, well, reality. The theory assumes we're these perfectly rational beings, but in reality, we're emotional, we're biased. The theory assumes we have all the information, but honestly, when does that ever happen? And it's all about self-interest, which kind of leaves out things like, being nice to people for no reason, or just doing something because that's what you've always done.
At the end of the day, the model isn't perfect because we don't live in a perfect little bubble. It has a really hard time accounting for stuff like peer pressure or our cultural background. And let's face it,
Our brains can only handle so much information at once. We have limits. Sometimes, what our family taught us or our personal values are way more powerful than any logical spreadsheet we could create in our heads.
So, where does that leave us? Should we just toss the whole theory out? No, not at all. The best way to think about it is like this. Rational choice theory is a powerful lens, but it's not a perfect mirror. It gives us an amazing starting point, a baseline for understanding behavior by assuming we're all trying to do what's best for ourselves. The real world is just a lot messier.
So, what's the big takeaway here? If you remember one thing, it's this. Life is just a series of trade-offs. Every choice means you're giving something up to get something else. And rational choice theory reminds us that deep down we're all just trying to make the best deal we can with the information and the values we have. It's as simple as that.
And that brings us to a final thought, a question for you to mull over. Think about the biggest, most important decisions you've ever made. Was it really just pure logic driving the bus? Or was something else in the driver's seat? Maybe intuition, emotion, a sense of duty? The answer is probably a mix of everything, right? And that's what makes us so complicated and so fascinatingly human.